Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm wearing my Harris shirt.
I see.
If anyone's seeing this and likes it, go to smashingpatriarchy.com to get one. But I am wearing it because we're talking about last night's debate, and we're going to put out a same day episode to talk about it.
We are. Hopefully this will not dysregulate me as much as watching the actual debate did.
Did it? Okay, well, first and foremost, can we just both agree she wiped the floor with them?
Oh, for sure. Okay. I mean, she's a litigator. She's a master debater. Like, she knows what she's doing. And it took all of 2 seconds for him to just begin unraveling.
To crumble. I like that you said master debater because of course I think of masturbator. But anyway, she's a master debater. Sorry. Got you right when you drink something. It's going to come out your nose. Okay, so I want to start off by the very beginning of the debate where she came out and walked over to shake his hand and he looked like a child running away from her.
Yes.
Hilarious and so smart.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the news right before the debate, and they were like, are they going to shake hands? Are they not going to shake hands? Who's going to make the first move to do that? Right? Like, how are we going to see this happen? And it looked like he was just not expecting that at all. He looked like a deer in the headlights when she walked over to him and was like, Kamala Harris. And he was like, what do I do? And so it's like, you shake her hand, but it looked like he had no intention of doing that whatsoever.
Exactly. It looked like he thought, who would do such a thing? Like, you could just tell that it would have never even crossed his mind to do that. And I love that she introduced herself because it was like such a contrast of like her being humble, even though I am sure she's far from humble. And my notifications are, nor should she be humble, right? Because she deserves to be, like, I think women deserve to be as full of themselves as anyone else.
Yeah.
But it was a real contrast between her being humble and then him and the way he is.
Yeah.
So
many billions that he's made that some people are even surprised about. Yeah. And, I think what I found really interesting about that is that someone pointed out, like, they've never met.
Yeah, I know, which is weird.
So I felt like it was a good move on her part to introduce herself as like, okay, this is our first official meeting. Like, let's acknowledge that, right? Let's not just gloss over it and just make this just two opponents in a death match, right? Running for president. Like, let's actually introduce ourselves.
And then it shows him as the person who looks like everyone should know who I am. Because I did not hear him say Donald Trump. I think
he did not introduce himself.
So he, it just was, again, it was that contrast. So that was a great way to start. And really quickly, they got into abortion, which was interesting to me that it came up so early. But I was glad it did. And I have to tell you, and I put this on Threads and it has a lot of likes. So it tells me that it resonates with other people. Because I said it felt really fucking liberating to have a woman talking about abortion in a presidential debate. To finally, and again, we both have issues with Kamala Harris. She's not our ideal perfect candidate. But the things that do make me happy is that kind of a moment where there is a woman, and again, trans men can be pregnant, and abortion affects more than just women. But throughout history, we've only had men in that role talking about our bodies, our rights. Yeah. And it just felt like I had this moment of going like, oh my God, this is so amazing hearing a woman. And you could tell too, like, the passion she brought to that topic was something else. It was very different than we've ever experienced in a presidential debate around that issue.
Yeah. I thought she did a really good job there. I'll say, like, the thing that shocked me about how early it was brought up, and he brought it up, was, and I only know this because Impact on Instagram put out like a bingo card for the debate. And so I was like really paying attention to the topics and like what was going on. Usually I don't. I'm just gonna, sit back and just let this happen to me. But last night I was like, okay, which topics are coming up? Like, so I could keep track on my bingo card. And the very first question by David Muir was about economics, right? The economy. And so she answered it, and then they gave him his time to respond, and he immediately brought up immigration.
Of
Like
course.
within 5 minutes.
Yep.
Within 5 minutes.
If you were doing a drinking game on how many times he talked about immigration, you would be dead today. So I hope no one was.
Yeah, because that was basically his soapbox.
That's
for
his
the
entire
time.
platform.
Yeah.
That and tariffs. He has two words: immigration, tariffs.
Oh my God, that one sentence that he said when he started talking about tariffs, I was like, if he says the word tariffs one more time, like I just felt like it was like tariffs, blah blah, tariffs, blah blah blah, tariffs.
Right. He's turned both tariffs and immigration into like those have become buzzwords that just I don't think that the bulk of his followers even actually have an understanding of really what either means or the implications of either. They just now know those as like important words, right? Of like, oh, you're against tariffs, you must be bad. Or, oh, you're for immigration, you must be bad. But anyway,
They're
yes,
dog
it was
whistles.
exactly.
Whistles.
Yeah. Especially the immigration thing. The economy was the first thing. And it was immediately that contrast between I'm going to talk about policies and actual things. Although I will say I didn't think she answered that first question because the first question was something like, are people better off than they were 4 years ago? And she,
sorry, that's my
we're all getting our notifications. It's okay. And she went into like all the things that she's going to do in the future. So she didn't really answer the question either, but at least it was policy based. And then, he went off the rails talking about immigration. And then I think pretty quickly it moved to abortion after that, right?
Yeah. Within the first like 10 minutes, it was
which is unusual.
Economy, immigration, abortion. And what I felt interesting is like his first response, I was like, oh, he's actually a little bit coherent today. So I was surprised.
The first couple responses, he's a little bit.
Yeah, but then I was watching a little bit of the news after, and they were talking about how much she was goading him.
Oh, she did.
She
did a masterful job.
The unraveling and the strategy worked. And so I think the unfortunate part about it is that like we didn't really get to hear a lot of like not her stance, but like her plans for some of the policy issues that were brought up, because a lot of the time, well, not a lot of the time, but I would say at least half the time was spent like directed at him, right? And so
he ended up with five or six more minutes of speaking time than she did because he kept interrupting. And
for sure. And that's one of the things that actually like it really pissed me off, because like they said at the beginning, before they even brought the candidates out, the mic is going to stay muted until it's your turn to talk. They didn't fucking keep his mic muted.
No.
And it was like, one, like you told the journalists moderating this debate that you were going to do that, and you basically just left them out, like you just threw them to the wolves by not being able to back that up. But then also like fucking just follow through. Like what does it say when like a major news station that is broadcasting this and has set up these rules of engagement for how to have this conversation, and they can't even follow through on that? Like, what does that communicate to the American people?
By the way, that was the rule Trump wanted. She tried to get that changed. She wanted to not have the muted mics. That was a rule that had been agreed upon back when it was Biden. She had been fighting up until recently, like the last couple of days, to say, let's change that rule. And he was adamant no, because his people know that he sounds bad when there's a hot mic, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately it worked in her favor, I think. And so she's probably not upset about it, but it was annoying because every time he started to talk when his mic was muted, they unmuted him.
Yeah.
When she would do it, they didn't, which is why he ended up with an extra, I think the news said something like 6 minutes more speaking time, which over an hour or so is substantial. Like it was definitely not even. And it was really because of that, because he kept interrupting. But I think part of the reason why, for the most part, she just let him go was because that was what she wanted. She wanted him to have that hot mic.
Yeah.
There was, and I actually felt like the one time when she was trying to like say, no, I need to talk about this thing that he keeps bringing up, and they weren't letting her unmute. And then she finally did it on her answer. I was like, as much as I get it, because it was bullshit and he's getting all this extra time, I think she should have just been like, let him go, because he's undoing himself. And her doing that like demanding thing falls unfortunately into that
his playbook. Yeah.
Exactly. This trope of this angry Black woman. And so I was like, just let him do it, because he is ruining himself.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that she conceded there. And she was like, you know, for lack of a better term, the bigger person in air quotes, right? I think it just, you know, as an earth sign, and I hate to bring this up.
No, go ahead.
The fucking integrity of journalism has just been shot. And that just,
for sure.
Oh my God, that just burns me up so much, because what it's communicating is that, like, he's a big baby, and if he throws a tantrum, he will get his way.
That's what he's learned in life.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And it works. So I will say on the journalist's behalf, first of all, David Muir is a very handsome man.
Oh my God, I 100% agree.
I know all the women last night were like, how have I been sleeping on David Muir? Like, how did I not know about this guy? I'm like, go check out his Instagram, because he posts like these. I mean, he's like a freaking supermodel in his Instagram. So anyway.
I probably should not follow his Instagram.
No, you shouldn't. But anyway, he's a very good looking man. And I was nervous, and I will say, and this is because we're now grading on a scale, but or a curve, but I do think they did a much better job than CNN did at that last debate. They did.
100%.
Yeah. They live fact checked some things. They pushed back on things. I was really proud of both of them. And I wish I could think of her name was like Angela something.
Lindsay something, I think.
Lindsay Davis. I don't know her. I have never seen her before. I'm not a big ABC News
Me
watcher.
either. We watch CBS at home.
I watch NBC. Anyway, but I did, I know David Muir, but I didn't know her. But they both did a really, I agree about the mic piece. Although there's this part of me that wonders, did they allow it because they knew that Harris wanted it? And they're like, I don't know. But I was proud that they at least did some fact checking in real time, because speaking of the abortion part, this whole, they're executing babies after they're born.
You mean like in the school shootings?
Right. In the past, he's gotten away with that, talking about this like after birth abortion nonsense, which is, in case anyone's curious, complete and total fabrication. Absolutely not true. But in the past, he's gotten away with saying those things without being checked at all. And so I was really happy that they did check him last night on that, because it's not okay for him to be able to continue to just say the most ridiculous things.
Unsubstantiated.
Yes, right?
Things,
Speaking of, well, actually, maybe before we do that, the other thing I want to say is, because we talked about him unraveling. So there was the abortion thing. And then one of the next pieces that started to come up, which is where the unraveling started and where she really gave her like knockout and it was over, was when she brought up crowd sizes. And she said, I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to encourage you to go to one of his rallies. Oh my God, this was masterful. And she was like, because you're going to
lost it.
Because she said, she first of all mentions crowd sizes, and then she talks about people leaving because he's boring. And you know, the thing that he wants people to think about him is that he's an entertainer. He's a master at that. And
because he's a celebrity.
You can see up until that point, he had been doing his best, which is
to keep it together.
But to like just stay stoic. He was staring at the camera. He never looked at her, which I thought was interesting because she looked at him a lot. He never looked at her. And he was just staring. And you could occasionally he'd give a little almost eye roll or kind of like start to let something out. But he was mostly like, I think,
composed.
He was hearing them yelling at him, Donald, don't do anything. Don't.
Yeah. I was like, I kept wondering, like, what are they saying into his earpiece?
In his mind, he was going like, and so then they didn't have earpieces.
Oh, they didn't?
No, they weren't allowed to have earpieces or notes. They couldn't even bring out notes. They could take notes there, but they couldn't bring anything prepared. So it was just him. This is why he unraveled, because there was no one there. But it was him remembering, they told me not to say, don't say anything, don't look, don't smile, don't roll my eyes. And then she said that, and he lost it. Like, that was it. He was like, no, I need to answer that. Not because he wanted to talk about any substantive policy, but because he needed to make sure people know I'm not boring. Huge crowds. People love me.
So many people at his rallies.
Oh my God.
Why would anyone go to her rallies?
Right. And it's when it really started to unravel for him, because he just, from there on, like, she managed to get him to like any semblance of like composure that he was trying really hard to keep was gone then. And that's when he started doing all the interrupting. And then we got into one of my favorite moments that I couldn't believe he did it, but I should have known he was gonna, was when he started talking about illegal aliens. I'm using air quotes because
their transgender operation.
Before that one, eating the pets.
Eating pets.
They're eating your cats and dogs, people. And I am like, what blatant xenophobia, racism, talk about dog whistles, like racist tropes, like just all of it, like in this one thing where I thought, I can't believe he went there.
Mm-hmm.
They had to have told him, don't do it.
Don't say that. Yeah.
Because we know he's been saying it at rallies and stuff, but I didn't think he was going to be stupid enough to do it, and he did. And I was like,
he did it.
Wow.
He did it. And it was so funny because like David Weir was like, okay, the city manager in Springfield, Ohio says there's no evidence of that. And then Don was like, no, there is. And David was like, no, there isn't. And he was like, no, there is. And David was like, no, there isn't, but moving on.
I know. Well, Trump's like, but he basically, Trump basically said, well, I saw it on TV, or someone told me something like that, where it's like, that's different than the literally the people that are there, the officials who are there to know these things said no. And it's just, that was like, it was funny, but it was also really, really upsetting, because the thing at that moment, I started to think, there are still like 34%, I think it is, of people who are going to vote for him no matter what. So even saying that kind of absolutely outlandish and clearly just straight up racist shit, they're still just like, yeah, I'm going to vote for him. Like that, it made me like, I got sad. Like I was laughing a lot last night at how off the rails he had gone, and like, oh my God, this couldn't be going better for her. But also it made me really sad. That was a moment where I was like, I can't believe that many people are still going to vote for this man. And to think the rest of the world is watching this.
Yes.
Oh, God, they're watching this.
Yeah. And the thing is, part of that 30-something% of people who will vote for him believe the same things that he believes.
That's what scares me. Like that there's that many people that are out there. Because, I mean, he sounded like a ranting, raving conspiracy theorist wearing an aluminum hat kind of person, right? Like the old man saying, get off my lawn. Did you hear about the aliens that are eating dogs who are, transgender pets? Like, I mean, just like a madman. And the fact that there are that many people who, like, we've gone that far away from reality that he doesn't represent. And it's like, he's not an anomaly. If he was, he would be an RFK, right? He'd be getting that kind of level of support.
Yeah,
We're talking 34% of people who will vote for him no matter what. And then there's another 10% of people who are like, come on, still mine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Like he is right up there with RFK. I think the difference is the context in which the American people know him and know RFK, right? Like they know RFK as being a part of the Kennedys. The Kennedy family has a history of being more left of center, right? And so conservatives feel a certain way about that. So there's more potential for them to have a bias against someone with a Kennedy name, right? And so they're less likely to believe anything that comes out of a Kennedy's mouth, whereas Donald Trump is seen as like this billionaire, this celebrity with all this status, like these marriages to these beautiful women, like, and so he's created this like brand for himself that those of us with critical thinking skills can see through, because the veil is very, very thin, right, as time goes on. But people who don't have critical thinking skills, people who might believe whatever they see on TV, right? Like I saw a BuzzFeed article this morning about like Trump putting out statistics from all these like news sites, again in air quotes, that aren't real news sites.
Right. Well, last night, one of his reference points for something, and I can't remember what it was now, but he was saying, oh, but everyone agrees with me. Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity, and like he started listening, they were all Fox opinion reporters. They're not even journalists. They're not. They're opinion people. They're the evening, but it's the lines have become so blurred that people don't even recognize that, and they need to, like, it should be required that on Fox News, MSNBC, like all of them, even Rachel, who I love, Rachel Maddow, like those things need to be labeled as opinion
news, or opinion,
not even news,
shows,
but opinion entertainment shows or something. Because people watch them and they see Fox News and they think they're watching a news channel. But first of all of their people skew more right. But their entire evening lineup is opinion pieces. They are not journalists. They are not the news folks. So it's very upsetting because he represents a very particular kind of person that there are more of in this country than we want to admit. And you talk about critical thinking skills, and this explains why the Project 2025 and the right wing want to stop teaching people critical thinking skills.
Yeah, because it's easier to manipulate people when they can't think for themselves.
Exactly. We don't want them to read books that might open their eyes to how him talking about immigrants eating dogs is very much part and parcel with things that have been used in the past to change people's minds about a group of people, to say where they once might have said, no, we can't round up a whole group of humans and kill them.
Yeah.
Now to say,
now it's
well,
okay because
they're eating dogs, they're not human. They're subhuman.
Yeah.
Like it's trying to create this narrative that they are not human.
Absolutely.
But we don't ever learn that these things have happened before, and you can see where they go. You don't have those critical thinking skills. And so, let's not teach real history. Let's not teach social emotional learning, because we don't want people to actually have empathy for other humans.
I thought it was interesting too how he was talking about how like crime was up, and crime is actually down.
I know.
Like, and when they tried to fact check him, he was like, oh, well, the FBI was like defrauded. The FBI was defrauded. And it's like, I was thinking about this last night, or this morning, actually. Like, therapists and psychologists strongly advise against arguing or debating with someone who is a narcissist or has narcissistic tendencies, because you just cannot win, right? They have created their own reality. And nothing you say can change their mind. Nothing you say is going to be right, because the only thing they're going to do is they're just going to extend the bubble of their reality to counter your argument. Yet here we are on the American political stage, forcing this accomplished, achieved, professional Black woman to debate with a narcissist. Like, one, that is not good for her mental health. And two, every woman who has had to work her ass off to be in the places that she wants to be, and has had to contend with mediocre or less than mediocre male supremacy, felt what Kamala was feeling last night. Like, they can empathize with her experience right now.
I wrote mediocre white man on my notes, so I'll mark that off, because that was one of the things I wanted to talk about too. Because I was like, talk about the epitome of a mediocre white man. That he has nothing substantive to say. He doesn't know at all about what he's talking. He does not know these issues. He doesn't even understand what tariffs are. He keeps talking about these illegal immigrants coming from asylums, which I truly think he has only understood because he's heard people talk about asylum seekers. I don't think he even understands what, I truly don't think he has any understanding of what he's talking about. And then, yes, you have this very smart, accomplished, incredible woman. Whether I fully agree with her or not, I can clearly see that she is a very intelligent, very accomplished woman standing next to him, having to deal with it. And her face last night told full story. Her expressions, it was just like, and I felt for her. I'm like, I couldn't compose myself the way she could.
No.
I would have been rolling my eyes, laughing nonstop.
I would have walked off. I'm like, this is a waste of time. I'm done.
I know.
I'm done.
Like, so the fact that she was able to, but I felt like that face, all of her faces, I agree with you. I think women were watching going like, I know that face. Like, I have been talked over by a man at work. I've been told I don't know what I'm talking about, gaslit, all of those things. Like, we all know it, and we all saw it in her face last night. It immediately made me think of a couple of my clients that we've had to like talk through how to handle some of that at work, because it was just like, oh my God, like this is the thing that we have to contend with every single fucking day of our lives. And it's gaslighting on a systemic level, on a political level, on a geographical level, right? Like, it's gaslighting at every level you could possibly think of. And I think, I think she did a great job. I think that obviously she is more qualified for this job than he is. And I was very, very disheartened about two things. One, nobody talked about COVID in the present tense. Yeah. They only talked about COVID in the past tense as part of the pandemic. They didn't acknowledge that it is still an ongoing thing, and that
cases are actually skyrocketing.
Yeah, the
these
numbers
days,
are wild.
Right? That it's still a problem for a lot of people. And to hear her also perpetuate the narrative of rapes on October 7th was enraging,
That
because that has been
section,
debunked.
yeah.
So
I knew
long
I was
ago.
going to be upset when they started to introduce, as soon as they were like, okay, let's talk about Israel, I'm like, okay, this part's going to piss me off
Yeah.
because, you know, of course it is. And yeah, she's continuing the same narrative she's been giving. And I think she knows it's a path to winning. And I hate that. And yet she's right, I'm sure. Although I don't know. It's an interesting place for her to be in, because I don't know if the pros of bringing in some of those more moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans who, you know, are Zionists and care deeply about this issue. I really wish I knew the truth about how that number compares to the number of deeply progressive Dems and non-Dems, but true progressives who are anti-Zionists, who do not agree with what's happening, do not like the way she's showing up. Like, I wish I knew the difference in those numbers. Clearly, they've probably done the research and have decided the numbers, those moderates, are more important, which sucks.
Yeah. There's also, there's talking points that like the empire of Israel, I'll call them an empire because that's what they are, right? The colonial state of Israel, like, they have a playbook, right, on talking points, right? Like, this has been shared on social media. This has been fact checked, right? Like, there's an actual playbook that has narrative talking points about how to talk about the colonial state of Israel. And that is shared widely among politicians all across the world, right? Like, that's something that's out there, that it's part of their propaganda toolkit. And so it's not surprising to me that, like, there's a very specific type of script, right, that's followed when talking about Israel. Like, you will hear U.S. politicians say the same things over and over again when talking about the state of Israel, because that's part of their script. And I think that's a dog whistle also, right? Because that's a dog whistle for funders, for Zionist funders. That's a dog whistle for other Zionist politicians. That's a dog whistle for Israel itself, right? Like, and so it was.
Well, and Israel has begun, like, publicly, top officials have started referring to West Bank. I had to look it up because I'm not good with these biblical names, but by its historic name of Judea and Samaria, or what they say. This biblical name that makes.
Serious?
Oh, it's been starting, and it's happening a lot more, and it's getting higher up in their officials that are now using that term and trying to correct people when they say West Bank. And that is yet another way that they're trying to push that just a little bit farther. Like, how far can they push things to get away with saying, no, this is our land, right? And they're getting far more blatant. And it is absolutely wild to me. So it's very upsetting. And what happened last night was exactly what I thought would happen as far as her response. She said exactly what I thought she would. So there was no big surprise there. It's still disappointing, but it wasn't a surprise. What did surprise me, speaking of other countries, was Trump not being able to say that he thinks that Russia should lose and Ukraine should win. I was like, wow, that was pretty stark. And they pushed him on it, and he wouldn't say it.
He wouldn't answer it.
Just
he
that the
wouldn't
war
answer
needs to end.
He was just like, oh, just the war needs to end. The war needs to end.
I was like, wow, if people weren't sure about him being in Putin's pocket, like, that should have really, I hope, woken some people up to say, okay. Okay, there's a few other things I have on my notes that I wanted to bring up. You just hinted at it, but I'll just mention it again. Him saying that they were performing trans surgeries on illegal aliens in prison, which is interesting. First of all, I did see a trans activist saying there are surgeries being performed on people in prison because our laws say that they deserve equal care, and that's wonderful.
That's healthcare.
Exactly, and I'm great with that.
Healthcare.
But I don't know where this line has come from for him. And I saw a lot of people saying it's like his, like, racist and homophobic and transphobic, like, Mad Libs. Like, he just put a bunch of the words
Yeah.
into a bag, shook them, and said, here, trans surgeries on illegal aliens in prison. That should get the people upset.
What
Yeah.
what
Oh.
my God, what a fucking idiot. Like,
He is. I know.
I'm like, a part of me is like, how did we get here?
Right.
But I know how we got here. Like, the same way Israel has gotten to the point where they are now calling the West Bank Judea or Samaria or whatever. Like, it's the same way we got here, where the goalpost keeps moving every time we concede a little bit. We concede a little bit, and then the goalpost moves a little bit more. Then we concede a little bit, and the goalpost moves a little bit more.
See,
people get emboldened.
That's what pisses me off about
neutrality.
Supporting the moderates so much, because the moderates aren't even moderate by what our moderate standards would have been 20 years ago, right? And so now she's really courting right-wing people.
Yeah.
And that's just moving everything more to the right. And so ultimately, it feels like they're still winning. Even when Democrats win, the Republicans are still winning because they're slowly chipping away at what Democrats are feeling like they can say. Okay, just moving on really quickly, because the other big thing that I thought about was they brought up the question about him questioning her as being Black, and he fumbled that ball so badly. He was like, I don't care what she is, right? And then he just was, I think he said like, well, but I read she was Black, and then I read she wasn't, and he just sounded like such a moron. And then she, I thought, did a really masterful job there as far as politicians go. Wouldn't be the way I would say she should show up, but this is why I'm not a Democratic strategist. But I thought she did a really masterful job of making that whole talking point sort of this place of unity. It felt very Barack in her answer there of like, we all have it was basically a version of hey, all you white people, you've got Black friends. So like, do you really want this nut job? I mean, that was ultimately sort of what she was saying in this way of like, kumbaya, we want America where we all get along. And I thought she handled that really well, especially after he fumbled it so bad.
Yeah. I totally missed that part. Like, our TV froze up for like a couple minutes while he was talking, nonetheless. And so there was just like this image on the screen of her just like doing this thing and him like, whatever, his ugly ass face.
Maybe it was the universe saving you from having to listen to that nonsense.
Maybe. I will reframe it that way for sure. But I think, along the lines of that, and I remember her also saying, like, she made a statement about people who are maybe Republican or more conservative than she is, and feeling kind of like there's Trump, like the Trump campaign has kind of fallen off the deep end. And she made a statement of like, there's room for you in our campaign. And I have to disagree. There. I would like to want racist people in my space. I don't want homophobic or transphobic or xenophobic people in my space. I don't want people who are okay with Palestinians getting eviscerated off the face of the planet for empire in my space. And so I think this whole concept of just unity, right? Like, I understand the message behind it, and I understand the reason why a lot of Democratic candidates have pushed that message for so long. But there's a difference between unity when you're moving in the same direction and your values are aligned, and just making space for things that are evil in this world. And there's a conflation of those two things when we're talking about unity that I am not comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that this country is at a place of needing at least 3 political parties. Truly, we need a progressive party, a racist party, and then what they would call the unity party, and I would call the like washed down bullshit party. Like, we need 3 parties, and then if you spread votes out across those 3, we would have a far more representative government.
Absolutely.
I think. And I would wish that would happen, because I'm at a place of like, I can't even align myself with Democrats anymore because they have moved so far to the center, really more towards the right. But
Yeah,
it just
because
does
the
not,
center keeps moving.
it doesn't resemble anything of like who I am. Okay, hold on, because I want to go back to what you just said about there's no room for those people in my life, but quickly just want to also mention my favorite line of the night, which was when David Muir pushed him, or was it Dave? I think it was him who pushed him. One of them pushed him on, do you have a plan? And he was like, I think it was for healthcare. And he said, I have concepts of a plan.
He said, I have concepts of a plan in my mind.
Yeah. And I'm like, that was the one time where I was like, I hard relate to Trump in this moment, even though I can't stand the man.
Owner,
right?
Lots of concepts of
I was
plan.
like, I thrive on concepts of a plan. That's all I have in my life is concepts of a plan. I put that in my bio on Threads because I loved it so much. I was like, concepts of a plan is absolutely like, I just think there were so many people who, even though it was ridiculous for a person who held the office for 4 years, has had 4 years since then to come up with plans, like, you should have actual plans.
Yeah.
But I think most of us, especially maybe the ADD folks, are like, I so relate to having a concept of a plan.
Yeah.
So I love that. Okay. So the last thing I want to touch on, maybe there's two things, but you just mentioned there's no room for people like that in my life. So now here we go. And I get called all the time on Threads as a hater and what's wrong with me and why am I still drinking that haterade? And like, I just want to be negative, but I got to bring up Taylor Swift because she endorsed it, Kamala Harris, immediately following this debate. Oh, such bravery. After he's
That's
already
not
wiped
fucking brave.
Exactly.
That takes no bravery.
I was like, bitch, where were you months ago? Like, forget about, like, there's no amount of bravery or courage in it. And I was hearing people saying what courage it took. I was like, are you flipping kidding me? Okay, fine. But the other piece is, you just mentioned there's no room for those people in my life. She goes around and she can endorse Harris while being buddy, chummy
with Brittany Mahomes,
who's made it clear she supports Trump.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what does that say? And I've heard people say, oh, you have to have room for you should be able to respect everyone's opinions. And what kind of person just doesn't have any, who won't be friends with someone just because they have different political beliefs? And I'm like, exactly like you. There's a difference between having, we could talk about nuances around like, should we be funding, I don't know, after school care programs?
Yeah.
Okay. We could talk about
policy decisions.
Yeah. Let's talk about whether that's something that's a good use of our money or would it be better suited to like help with homelessness? Okay, great. That's a real substantive place where we might have some disagreement.
Yeah.
But to support a candidate who is talking about human beings eating pets as a way to dehumanize them, talking about trans issues like as if trans people are, basically supporting rounding up trans people and like getting rid of them, rounding up millions of illegal aliens in his words and deporting them. Like the language that he uses for somebody also, by the way, who's married to a black man, to support those policies and then say, yeah, we can be friends. We can just disagree on those things. While also on the other side of her mouth saying, I totally support Harris and everything she's about. And I love all the people. She made that stupid movie years ago about how she's Miss Americana, because she like was going to fight against Trump and how she loves, her LGBTQ fans and she's there for everyone. And then to be friends, like buddy, not just like, anyway, I'm with you. Like, there's no room for those people in my life.
No, there's not. And here I am, and I'm going to keep drinking my haterade.
Me too. I've been drinking
because if that makes me a hater, then that makes me a hater. It makes me a hater of all things that are vicious and disgusting and
a hater of hate
against the dignity of the humanity of people, not just in this country, but all over the world. And I think that it does not take any kind of bravery to say which candidate you're going to endorse, especially when you have such a public platform.
And when the choices are this stark.
Yes, that's your responsibility. That's your social responsibility to be able to do things like that. And that's the fucking bare minimum. And
and she did it with less than 60 days to go before the election.
Right,
she did it after it was clear that Harris had just wiped the floor with him and he had made a giant fool of himself.
Yeah.
And to say that it was courageous while she simultaneously is hanging out with people who are filled with hate. There's no other way to say it. If you are somebody who's supporting Trump, you are filled with hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you are okay with excusing hate, and that is no better than you being filled with hate.
No, it's not. Because it's complicity. It's complicity. You are either filled with hate or okay with hate or the fucking dumbest person on the planet, which I know sounds harsh, and I'm speaking partially out of anger here, but I think I have a right to be angry here because This has gone on for too fucking long. Too fucking long. Like, when are we gonna say enough?
Yeah.
When are we gonna say enough?
Yeah. And and people can call me a hater, but I'm just tired of elevating this person and treating her as if, first of all, they infantilize her, to treat her like she's like some 17-year-old who's just doing this bold, brave act. She's a 30-year-old. Yeah, she's a 30-something-year-old woman. She could be doing so much more. There is no amount of bravery in what she's done. And issuing a statement on Instagram with a picture of her and her cute cat. Like, I get the joke with JD Vance, but like, it was not brave. There was no, and she even tied it to the AI stuff of like Trump using AI, like this AI endorsement, which even to me then is like this way of her kind of making it like, well, I didn't really want to do this, but I have to do it.
But I had to because they put me in this position.
And so it doesn't even feel like, there's just nothing about it feels brave. Do I think it will make a difference? Possibly.
No.
Might bring out some younger voters. That's cool. Yeah. But I'm not going to act as if she's helping, that she's done something monumental here, because it's ridiculous.
It's the bare minimum. It's the bare minimum. And I think, for people who have maybe been on the fence about Trump, or even about Kamala, like I think last night was, if you watched or if you just caught the quick bites, like the sound bites or whatever today, like obviously those of us who have been following knew how it was going to go down. And if you have kind of checked out, like it, oh my God, when did we leave?
If you're not sure that he lost, he went into the spin room last night after the debate. That never happens. Politicians never go into the candidates don't ever go into the spin room.
What's the spin room?
It's the space that after the debate, there's the press is all in this big room, and usually they have like surrogates for the candidate. So like Gavin Newsom usually, it will be there, or maybe Tim Walz, but usually not even. He wasn't there. But it's like these kind of names inside of each party that show up to go and do interviews with all the media to kind of spin what happened towards their candidate winning. And that has always happened, but never does the candidate themselves go into the spin room, because that's like, I don't know, it's like sort of saying, I did so bad that I need to come in here and save myself, because normally they go and they either go to a rally or they go home or whatever. It's a hotel. But last night Trump showed up in the spin room, which just never happens. And they were all like, what's happening here? And I think it was that clear to him that he had done that badly. So he lost.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. He
Now
definitely
let's hope he can lose the election.
Yes. Yeah. I was watching last night and I was like, she's clearly wiping the floor with him, but is this going to matter?
That's ultimately what I wonder too. And I haven't yet heard about the ratings, how many people watched. They were predicting it could be huge. They were saying it could be as many as 70, 80 million, which is like on par with like the Seinfeld finale, not Super Bowl levels, but like huge, more than any of the other debate. I don't know if that ended up happening. I'm curious, because if enough people watched, and there definitely will be enough today on social media, which is unfortunately how a lot of people get their news, and on the news, maybe that will have some difference. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I didn't feel like there were any, and I think it's stupid that this matters, and maybe it doesn't matter, but often out of a debate, there are like one or two zingers that kind of become lines that they use. And while I think she did a great job of making him look bad, I don't feel like she got any of those sort of things in that are like the line everyone's going to remember and kind of use, or like becomes like this rallying cry. Yeah. I don't think that happens, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah. And I really am curious if he will have a second debate. They were talking about a second debate. I don't think stupid for him to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they'll put him in front of her again. I think there were two lines, one from each of them, that I think will actually be memorable.
Okay.
Right. So like the first one is from him where he was like, "I'm speaking. Does that sound familiar?"
Oh, I remember that line. Oh, I missed that one. Darn it.
Yeah, I saw somebody post that as a quote today. And was like, "Oh, he's a fan of Kamala, because if he remembers that, like he's obviously been watching her, right? And he thinks that's a good line or whatever. And so he wanted to use it." And then the other one was where she said, Donald Trump was fired by 81 million Americans, and he is clearly having a difficult time processing that.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And you could tell that one was another one where he was like, nobody uses my "you're fired" line on me.
Yeah. And the context of that was if I remember correctly, I may be mistaken here, but because he kept talking about how he fired all these people that were disagreeing with him. And that's how
right,
you know that you're a good leader, when you fire people or whatever. And it was like, that's your benchmark for like good leadership, like firing people and also being feared. Like he talked about the Hungarian president saying, we need Donald Trump back in there. He's the most feared president.
That was the greatest.
You want people to be fucking afraid of you?
Right. When she was saying, because she was talking about world leaders thinking he's a joke, and like she was saying, like they think you're a joke.
Yeah.
Which was great. And his response to that, was talking about Orban. And I think I don't know if he mentioned Putin, but we know like his relationship with all of these dictators, and the fact that he immediately goes there with them, like these are the people that he uses as his like references. So if he was applying for a job and those are his references, I would be like, I think that we're going to probably say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Taina, it was a great debate. It did not go the way the last presidential debate did. I don't think she'll be dropping out, which is good. Probably for America. Yeah. I think we both still have our reservations.
Yeah.
I don't think that she's going to ever be able to address those. And I just don't think this party is able to do that. And my biggest hope is we're moving towards a place where we do go to having a viable third party that is progressive, and that somehow that helps to create a little more equilibrium inside of our country. But I hope she wins, because I don't want to see Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, never have I seen somebody so unfit for office. Like my dog would do a better job. So
unfit for any job.
For anything.
Any job. I wouldn't, if I owned a McDonald's, I would not hire him to clean the floor.
The only thing he's really fit for is where I hope he ends up, which is prison.
Or an asylum, because he's clearly out of his mind.
Well,
I will say one last
he loves
thing.
talking about asylums, so.
I did appreciate that there was no audience, because I feel like when there's an audience, I feel like he kind of is like, he has this.
That's a change I like, and I hope they stick with. Because the clap, they end up applauding, and then the moderators are now managing.
Yeah.
Shush, please don't. Blah, blah, and like, and that, if you ever been to a movie all alone, a comedy, let's say in particular, you go to a comedy alone, like you'll be like, but when you see the same movie with a crowd, there's something contagious that happens.
Energy,
and it affects you. And so that crowd stuff can influence a lot around how people feel, just based on, that's where those zingers and stuff really end up coming into play. And when they're not there, they're less likely to do it.
Two people having a conversation.
I agree. I hope that stays. I don't like that the Commission on Presidential Debates is no longer involved. They should be. I don't love having just the networks deciding what's going on. I don't like having these baloney pseudo journalists. I wish at least PBS would be back involved. Like when they've had their people, it's been much better. But nobody's going to listen to us probably.
No. We're just two messy people, two messy haters.
Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
I know people say that all the time, and if you're like me, often you just go on to the next podcast, but truly, taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.